Welcome, folks, to episode 293 of the Alamo Audible Podcast, your home for UTSA football news, analysis, updates, all that good stuff. It's the off season for us now. I guess this is the last week, technically, of the college football season. Miami and Indiana set to square off in what's going to be a great national championship game. Semifinals are great. I am back from a very long vacation in Asia, Southeast Asia, which was amazing. So thank you, Javi and Adrian, for keeping the show rolling through the bowl game for me. I did my best to try to connect via VPN from Cambodia to watch the First Responders Bowl against Florida National University. And I got maybe, I don't know, I probably saw like 30, 40 snaps of the game live, and then I had to wait like 2 weeks to watch the rest of it. So you guys were awesome. Really, really enjoyed that episode. Thanks so much for covering for me while I was out.
Where were you during that stream? Were you like in like some street side cafe, just like huddled over the table? Or...
No, I was at the hotel. They do have Wi-Fi in the hotels in Southeast Asia, believe it or not.
Man, I would have loved like the story of like the locals like seeing what you were watching on the phone, and you're like, oh, "This is my alma mater."
That's so funny. You know, there are a lot of sports bars in Asia that are open super early in the morning for the expats to like, you know, watch baseball or whatever. It's kind of funny to walk past those, but no, I just watched it at the hotel. It worked fine until the rest of the hotel guests woke up and started using the bandwidth, and then I had no connection.
You know, it was just like when ESPN was looking at where all the traffic was coming from, like, what the hell, Southeast Asia?
Well, no, they block it for outside of the U.S., so I had to like do a VPN connection.
Oh shoot!
Yeah, so that was a long way to send traffic back and forth.
Hey, one of the highest watched bowl games, right, of the American this year?
That's true.
3-some million.
Primetime slot, man. It's a primetime slot. UTSA gets the big win on it, and you can hear more on Javi and I's recap. Available on your favorite podcast app. Thank you, Javi. That was fantastic stuff. Yes.
I mentioned that, but that first quarter, man, we were very close to having to do like a midnight session of instant reaction.
Instant reaction, yeah. That would have been brutal. It was ugly. It was an ugly beginning.
Oh, man. No, but glad Jared is back. Glad we could hold it down for that episode. But definitely some exciting things coming up for the Roadrunners this offseason, so...
I would say maybe even more anticipated than the bowl matchup was UTSA's coaching staff changes, at least amongst the fan base. I think more people were jonesing to see who was going to be hired as the new offensive coordinator than to see if we were going to beat FIU in the First Responders Bowl, another Dallas-Fort Worth area postseason matchup for the Roadrunners. And we have the answers to both those questions. UTSA did win their bowl game, and we have hired a new offensive coordinator in Rick Bowie, which we're going to get into a very, very deep dive on Jeff Traylor's decision-making, who our new offensive coordinator is, what we can expect to happen with UTSA's offense going into 2026 and beyond. And there's a little bit more coaching news around there as well, but that's the big one. That's a big one, and we'll get on all of them as well.
Yeah, and I feel like before we get into the new hires, it's probably good to spend at least a few minutes talking about the guys who are no longer on the staff, right? We've talked a lot about some of these coaches throughout the years, but now that they're like officially gone, I think it's probably good to spend a little bit more time. And I think Justin Burke is a guy that's he got a lot of flack from the fan base, and I don't think he obviously was not as good as some of his predecessors at offensive coordinator, right? Will Stein, now the head coach of Kentucky. Blanking on Barry Looney. No, not
Barry Looney.
Barry Looney, offensive coordinator at Illinois, doing a great job there. Their offense has been very competitive. I think Burke just couldn't quite live up to those two guys in terms of like in-game adjustments. I think his game planning was very strong. You would see that with his scripted drives. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just anecdotally, it felt like UTSA averaged like 5 points per possession when they were coming out of the first quarter or second quarter, first possession and a half, right, where you come out of the locker room with the game plan and really have some weaknesses to attack, but kind of over the span of the game as defenses would adjust, it always felt like he was a little bit slower or maybe on his heels a little bit in terms of play calling. I think the other thing for me with Burke is like the quarterback coaching. I just don't think it was that great under him. That to me, that was the biggest differentiation between him, Looney, and Stein, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Owen McCown's a great quarterback, but the consistency and the progression over time, I don't think was as consistent as what we saw Sorry, Francois. If you're watching on video, Francois is like all over the place. He's so excited to have me back doing the podcast, evidently. I think also like the development of the younger guys, right? Like we didn't really see another quarterback develop into a clear backup, right? I don't think anyone feels super strong about where that room is at right now today. There's still hope, there's still potential with some of those guys, but I think the recruiting and the development at the most important position of the offense left a lot to be desired. Now, on the other hand, I'll give Burke a lot of credit for how he developed and used those tight ends, right? It was really, unfortunately, like pretty much none of those guys are here anymore, but it was really cool to see Houston Thomas, Patrick Overmeyer, Dan Dishman. Going back to Oscar Cardenas probably deserves a bit of credit for that as well. Just how strong that position unit has been for UTSA historically. I think it had a big part to do with that. And it was always fun to see the different ways he could find to get the tight ends involved in the offense.
It was the one position that I think he was really able to game plan to the strengths of the unit. But yeah, I think there was still a lot to be desired as far as getting our other skill positions in the best position to succeed, if you will. And yeah, I think O. McCown catches a lot of unfair flack sometimes. Javi and I highlighted is a 30 touchdown to 7 interception quarterback this year, almost 3,000 yards with his arm. Hey, the guy's been phenomenally consistent and still has big playability, regardless of the injury bug. I think you're right, Jared. I think the quarterback development was lacking a little bit under Justin Burke. And so that's just one of those things where who knows how Owens 2025 could have looked if he was getting coached up a little bit better. I don't know. I guess like a big question for me is do you feel like Justin Burke's stay was a little bit over? Or did he overstay his welcome at the offensive coordinator position? Was this a move that UTSA maybe should have made earlier? Season ago.
I think he left at the perfect time, right? Like I don't think you could have done another season of Burke as your OC. Like we've highlighted, I think he's a great offensive mind, great with scheme, but maybe not a great leader of just like the cohesive group of an offense, right? You saw, the tight ends do great, but then there was one year where the running backs were not great, right? And then the wide receivers this year seemed to take a step back a little bit as well, I thought. So I just don't think he just wasn't as well rounded as we wanted him to be, as maybe Steiner and Lenny were. And obviously we know where Stein is now, and Lenny was a leader of a top 10 offense at one point this season, right? So I think it's a perfect time of parting of the ways. I think the more we learn, though, it wasn't necessarily mutual, right? The way we kind of hear behind the scenes things played out, especially with Burke being named the tight end coach at Kentucky today, actually. So. But no, like to your point, Adrian, I think they parted at the right time. I know you could have made an argument maybe a year earlier, but I think this is a perfect time to do it.
Yeah, and we never really saw the bottom fall out, right? And that's what I always look for. We've seen what that looks like here at UTSA, and the offense was sluggish. It was hard to watch sometimes. It left a lot to be desired, but it was never really truly bad, right? So I feel very fortunate that things never really got to that point. But two, let's talk a little bit about Joe Price as well. I mean, he's a guy who's really had his fingerprints all over the development of this program in the Jeff Traylor era. I think everyone's always going to associate the big three wide receivers with him. Sakari Franklin, Josh Cephas, JT Clark, right? He was receivers coach for the best run of receiver play that we've ever seen at UTSA and probably ever will for maybe our lifetimes, honestly, guys. I think it was a very, very special group. Now, Price didn't recruit those guys. Cephas, maybe? No.
No.
I think Cephas was already here,
Yeah. But he definitely got the best out of those guys. And that helped bring about the best stretch of success in this program's history. And he was a very, very key recruiter for UTSA. Javi and I have talked about this a lot off air. I feel like the talent level at receiver in like that East Houston pipeline started to kind of dwindle a bit over the past couple of years, right? So I think just like with Burke, I think Price stepped away at the right time, right? Like for whatever reason, like the results just weren't there like we've seen the last couple of years, but he's still a great coach. I think a change of scenery is best for everyone. And like we've talked about, Adrian and I talked about some podcasts, like I think mid or early 2025 season, like some fresh perspective is needed, right? We need to change things up a little bit. Doing the same thing that we've been doing for 5 years has gotten stale, and it's not pushing the program forward. So bringing in some fresh blood to change things up a little bit, I think, is a good move.
Definitely so. And so Jeff Traylor, for the first time here, goes outside of the internal promotion route whenever he comes due to make these big coaching decisions, and he goes external. It was what everyone was kind of hoping for, and he had a really big pool to sort of choose from. And you heard him talking about how sort of strenuous the interviewing process was, the hiring process was for him. So I think he really did go through a ton of external candidates and really go all the way through his Rolodex to try to find the right guy. We're I don't think too surprised that he went external. I think he was at a point where he didn't have a choice but to go external, despite Hunter Ridman calling a pretty solid bowl game or whatever in the First Responders Bowl. We all sort of knew Jeff Traylor had to go external with this hire, and he did. And so I won't say pleasantly surprised, just pleased in general that he went ahead and did that with the external.
Well, Adrian, I wonder too. I mean, you said that Traylor had to go deep in the Rolodex. I don't know if it was like that. I mean, I think these positions were highly valued externally, and I think it was more of him kind of receiving quality candidates and assessing them than kind of going and searching out for guys. Receiver coach might be different. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I think when it comes to offensive coordinator, the guy we hired was not like some of the key names that were floating around, but they were interested. Like, we know for sure that Graham Harrell interviewed for this job. So I think that says a lot. I think the pay for this position is really good. You're going to have a great offense to work with. UTSA has really stepped it up with the revenue sharing. It's a good job, right? So I think it's a lot more different than how it was under Frank Wilson and maybe early days of Traylor, where like if you had to replace a coach, like you had to go find some dude who was like unheard of and kind of undervalued and give him a chance, versus now you can pull up from other schools. I mean, to get the passing game coordinator from a Pac-12 school to come in and be your wide receivers coach is really phenomenal. And, to get the standing offensive coordinator for one of the better Group of 5 programs in America in Western Kentucky to come in as well, I think really says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's just crazy that you mentioned Graham Harrell interviewing for the job, because I always like to put perspective on it and imagine ourselves like 5-10 years ago, if that were to happen, how like just ridiculous that would be, and I'd be like, oh well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, it's still, and again, putting it into perspective, a couple years ago we were in Conference USA battling with Western Kentucky. Now you're taking their offensive coordinator, right? Again, it just goes to show how much UTSA kind of keeps progressing and going up the ladder of college football. So great moves there, right? So you take a wide receivers coach, passing game coordinator from the Pac-12. It's just you're seeing all the right things that you want to see from a program that kind of wants to keep in the upper echelon of the conference. So, maybe not as a well-known name as like a Graham Harrell and I'm sure some others, but like you mentioned, Jared, it's an attractive job, right? Especially with Owen coming back, with what appears to be Will Henderson coming back, knock on wood, with an offensive line that seems to be somewhat intact, knock on wood once again. It has to be an attractive job. So I'm sure, I think we mentioned it, Adrian, that Jeff had like a smirk on his face every time that he got asked about it. I think it was good with good reason, because people wanted this job. They know now that, you see Will Stein, you see Barry Lunny, you see Joe Price now, and others that have gone on to do bigger and better things after UTSA. A good year at UTSA could get you a Power 4 job, right? So
it doesn't
I'm
even
sure
have to be a good year. I mean, like Joe Price did not have a very good year.
No,
he's a coach in Kentucky, So there was clear upward mobility here that's been consistent through Traylor's time in San Antonio, and I think that's been noticed across the country and it's been appreciated.
And Jeff Traylor himself wasn't a huge name at the time that we were making that head coaching search, right? And so you look at Rick Bowie and like the resume is kind of short, right? So you're going and you're getting the upcoming stud rather than the legacy big resume guy like a Graham Harrell. I mean, it's a real big contrast between those two resumes whenever you look at it. But you like the fiery, youthful, excitement that an up and coming coach brings. Rick Bowie is exactly that. I mean, you look at what he did at Abilene Christian, what he did at Western Kentucky. I mean, just a phenomenal job running those offenses, man. I mean, up-tempo, electric, air raid stuff. I mean, the kind of things that UTSA fans have been salivating for, I think, when you talk about the days of the trio big three wide receivers that we had, the University of Hands with Frank Harris. I mean, those offenses were so electric to watch because any snap was bound to be a massive gain or even a touchdown. And they could come from behind and have these big offensive runs on the 2-minute drill and have a come from behind victory in the fourth quarter. I mean, it seemed to happen every single week with this team under Frank Harris and those big three receivers. And so now you feel like you might be getting back to that sort of offensive style that we had under Barry Looney and Will Stein.
Yeah, before we like kind of get into the deep dive on the new coaches, I'll say too, I mean, I think Traylor hiring Jalen Scott and Tommy Robinson as his inside linebacker and running backs coach last cycle was really big because I think to him that proved that this is a very attractive place to coach, right? He got two super strong coaches to come in. That was his first time. You know, everyone has this talking point. Adrian, you just said it too. I was rolling my eyes internally that like Traylor never makes external hires. He's always done internal promotions. That's not true anymore, right? He's gone out. He's got coaches. And I think the last time he did that, he got some really good coaches who elevated both of those rooms big time, both on the recruiting trail, player retention, and actual like on-field performance. And I think to him that was like, okay, like I can be more bold with my staff. I can put more pressure on more guys because that's when you start to see him start like talking about his coaches a little more broad, a little more openly in press conferences. And it's like, hey, like, you know, if you're not getting the job done, I've got a line of guys waiting outside the door with resumes in hand, you know, ready to take these roles. So that's why I was always a little bit more bullish, I think, than most fans that he was going to make some coaching changes and to make some external hires because I think that he saw it work previously with those last two positions. So I hope that trend continues, and I hope he continues to take a sharp look at his staff. I think there's other changes that he can make too, you know, so
we'll see. And you know, we were just talking about how the recruiting woes, right? It kind of got stagnant on the pipeline for both Burke and Price. That's something huge. I mean, you know, we could devote an entire episode to the portal exodus that UTSA is going through right now in the offseason of 2025 and 2026, unlike we've ever seen before under Jeff Traylor. And so, yeah, you need to have some guys that are going to be capable of reloading and retooling their units season in and season out.
So before we get into Rick Bowie, do you want to take a quick moment for some Patreon shoutouts? Very happy to come back from vacation and find some new Patreon subscribers. So thank you to Anthony Hernandez for joining us at the booster tier. Shout out to Chuck for upgrading from the insider tier with an annual sub as well. And one that was very special to me, L Runner was a legendary poster on HobbiesBirdsUp.com. And for the longest time, I was like, when is L Runner going to sign up for Patreon? What are we doing wrong that we don't have L Runner support? He finally joined us at the booster tier. He's been active on the Patreon chat. So thank you, sir, for signing up. Meant a lot. A big sign of validation for me as a longtime admirer of his post. Gonna get the Birds Up family back together as well in the chat.
You know, talking about the transfer portal exodus, all of the crazy happening with recruiting. Javi and the Birds Up team are all over that thing like white on rice, dude. And we've got an exclusive channel right there on the Patreon app where you can get the latest.
Yeah, on that
as it comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Like Adrian said, it's kind of. But I think when we first jumped on, it kind of mentioned how I like just that it's more like a chat feature. So as soon as I get the info, it's kind of like just scrolling down, right, and posting it. So I think it's been working pretty well, and I think you've seen, you know, like I put a post, right, like, hey, just be patient. It's coming.
Yeah.
We can't quite reveal it just yet, but I made a comment there, like there's a method to the madness. The people that have been following me for a while kind of know it's kind of methodical the way it goes, but it bears fruit, right? Most of the time, the way it works out, I try to give just enough so people know without revealing, you know, what people want to keep to themselves because they want to be the ones putting that information out there. So I always want to give them the the opportunity to do that before we make it public. But yeah, just make sure you subscribe to that tier so you can get all the latest content. And I believe Julio, who was one of the staff writers of Birds Up, has been posting some updates as well with the new commit. So we're rolling right now. It's great.
Yep, yes, sir. All right, well, let's talk about UTSA's new offensive coordinator. So I got back from a nice, pretty much 3-week break from no football at all. Saw UTSA got a new offensive coordinator. I went and got a subscription to a coaching seminar website where you can watch different coaches break down their film and talk about different concepts they run and stuff like that. So I watched several hours of instructional video from Mr. Rick Bowie from his time both at Valdosta State, Evelyn Christian, and a little bit from Western Kentucky as well. Real sicko behavior, but I truly loved it, and I feel like I know his offense extremely well now. So looking forward to breaking it down with you guys.
Okay, so that said, 1 to 10, what is Jared's temperature on the Rick Bowie hire after?
On the
his
hire?
seminar?
Oh man, I'm a solid 8.5 right now for sure.
After coaching seminar sessions, 8.5.
Yeah,
dude, that's juicy. That's a good number,
right? And I say too. I think the only thing that really holds it back from being a 10 is just skins on the wall. He's a young guy, right? He's still working his way up, right? But everything that I've seen, I've really liked. He's just got to continue doing it at a high level, putting good quarterback play on tape, and I think he's going to do that here. But from a philosophical standpoint, I like it a lot.
Very nice.
What was your guys' initial reaction to it? As a name that's kind of a bit out of left field. In hindsight, I was kind of kicking myself because it's probably one I should have thought of. But he was not on my list of candidates, at least.
Yeah, I found myself kind of like, I'm like, man, Western Kentucky, I never think of that. And especially knowing that they imported that offense from Abilene Christian, right, with Maverick McIver. So, man, same. I was like, man, like, how did I not think about that one? But I think the instant reaction, just without deep diving just yet, was man, like we mentioned, outside the box a little bit, just enough connections to Texas, right, but still enough diversity in the resume and in the skins on the wall, while still being young enough where you makes you confident that they can kind of take that next level as a play caller and as a coordinator, as a leader of an offense. So no, yeah, I was pretty happy once you really just reading his bio and his press release. I walked away pretty happy with what they had come.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I love his bio, but and I just love the style of offense that he runs. Again, I think that's the style of offense that had the Alamo Dome absolutely electrifying during the Frank Harris run. And if we can get a little bit of that back, I think with Owen's raw talent, there's the sky is the limit. If he can get the right pieces around him to throw the ball to, I think there's just a tremendous potential here for the 1-year turnaround and the mass exodus that we've seen of coaching staffs in the American Conference. I mean, this is the right guy for UTSA to come out and take advantage of what is a conference that's kind of flipped on its head right now, whereas UTSA still, despite the portal exodus, somewhat steady-handed with Jeff Traylor at the helm and Owen McCown at quarterback, right? And so you got a guy here that could maybe kick up the tempo for you, get people excited about watching UTSA football, get your home field advantage back in the Alamo Dome with the big 30,000 plus crowds. You just got to rattle off a couple of wins to do it. I mean, it happens pretty quickly when the magic gets rolling. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited about it. Whenever I first got through the biography, but to your point too, I was kind of thinking, oh, Western Kentucky. But then you think about, that pipeline of having the next up and coming guy. It really is the best situation to be in for UTSA.
Yeah, let's do a little bit about, I guess, a resume recap or kind of a walkthrough, and maybe dive a little bit deeper than what you just see in the press release. One thing that's really interesting is, this is a guy, he was a college quarterback, which I've said before, that's very important to me, that the offensive coordinator have experience playing quarterback. Knows what it's like to have the bullets fly at you. So glad to see that. Now, by his own admittance, he was not a very good one, right? I think he got benched, wasn't a full-time starter. Some small school, too. I can't remember where it was. But still knows the game. He's been in the sea before, which is really important to me. So obviously he didn't go play in the NFL or anything like that.
No.
He was just like a teacher, a 4th grade teacher at the school name caught my eye, St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. And I said, son of a gun. Biff Poggi was his first boss. The Biff.
Dude, there's just somehow, some way, Biff Poggi cannot stay off the Alamo Audible podcast.
It's crazy,
he always
bro.
finds a way to creep back up on
90 degrees of Biff.
Dude,
Yeah,
he's a cockroach, man. Like, he'll come crawling out of the rubble no matter what. But, like, I saw St. David's Academy, and I was like, okay, surely Biff was there during that time. And I went and looked it up. I, like, went year by year just to confirm it. Like, yep, sure enough, Biff gave him his first job as a coach. So that's crazy. So he did that for a little bit, and then he went and got a graduate degree, and he was at FIU, I think, somewhere along the way as an intern or something. But he really got started as a graduate assistant under Dana Holgerson in West Virginia. That's where he really started to learn the air raid. So his air raid is the Dana Holgerson air raid, right? It's not necessarily like a Mike Leach air raid. And there's different forms and flavors of it all. But Dana's is a little bit more flexible. Like, they're much more open to running the football. And two, I think it looks a lot similar to like what Texas State runs on offense, which is very encouraging to me, and I think for a lot of fans as well, because we've seen what that offense can do. And the reason why I was kicking myself that Bowie wasn't on my list of candidates is because he was the wide receivers coach at Houston when Dana was there. And like, usually I know the position coaches of the Power 5 schools in state, because like those are the first places you look to try to find an OC. So kind of flew my radar there. After that, he went and took the offensive coordinator job at Valdosta State, which is a very, very good Division II program. And he had a ton of success there. Won a ton of games. He coached an All-American quarterback that I think finished third place in like the D2 Player of the Year voting. And that's where he kind of made his mark as a play caller, building his own version of the air raid and all of that. And I think he was there for 2 years or so. Got noticed at Abilene Christian, went up to the FCS level. And then he recruited, Javi mentioned him, Maverick McIver. Well, he was a Texas Tech quarterback that kind of fell out of favor over there, went down to Abilene Christian, and totally like rebuilt his career. He also got All-American honors at quarterback there at ACU. And the two of them combined actually won the first playoff game ever for Abilene Christian, because they had just moved up from D2 to FCS around the time that he arrived. So really, really great showing there, and it goes on to Western Kentucky, and just 1 year there as an offensive coordinator coming to UTSA. But a very quick rise for him, but I think a good variety of experience under a lot of good offensive minds, right? Biff Poggi, maybe not so much, but Dana Holgerson and Western Kentucky's coach. Help me out.
Helton.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's a good coaching tree to come from, and I like the point that you make about him coming from the quarterback position. Granted, even if he wasn't a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, there's something to say, and I think there's something to say about personnel respecting the boss who has been in the position, right? Like, not just in football, but like us that work in corporate America, right? Yeah. If your boss was in your position at one point, he tends to understand your role a little bit more. You tend to respect him a little bit more. So I do like that. But yeah, it's a good coaching tree that he hails from. And golly, you look at the different styles of the air raid, Jared, but talk a little bit more about the differences in the air raid whenever you talk about Dana Holgerson's air raid. It's a little more balanced of an attack.
Yeah. Well, I think like when it comes to the air raid, there's kind of like a traditional approach and then maybe like a more modern approach. I'm sure like air raid aficionados would tear us apart and go way deeper. But the traditional air raid that you kind of saw, like, back in the 80s at BYU, and then Mike Leach brings it to Texas Tech and kind of revolutionizes the game. You're just running like a very small number of plays really fast, and mesh is like the primary play where you've got two crossers over the middle of the field. Then you got guys going deep on the outside. Really forces the defense to have to make some tough choices, and plays with a lot of space. Now, you typically have like short routes and deep routes in that, but you don't really use the running back all that much. It's super limited, and usually as like a safety valve. You check it out to them when the blitz is coming and all of that. Some of the more modern offenses that you see, it's much more around like creating spacing any way you can get it, right? So like one thing that Bowie talks a lot in those videos that I watch is like making safeties have to choose, like sending like multiple deep routes to the same zone. Because like defenses have learned how to play the air raid. It's so common now. It's the most popular offense in Texas high school football. So guys are used to it, right? So you started to see like schematic adjustments from defenses to prevent against the air raid. And that typically means like slimming down the front of your defense, right? You see it at UTSA with the money backer position, where it's really like that hybrid between a safety and a linebacker. So there's a lot of ways that defenses have adjusted. So then a lot of these air raid coaches that are kind of like more, I don't know, modern in their approach are like, okay, well, since you've taken some weight out of the box, I'm going to run into it a lot more often, right? With both like zone running and gap schemes as well. And then a lot of the vertical aspect that you have now, it's around like choices from the receiver. And Bowie has a lot of interesting takes on that. He's a little bit different than like what Texas State does, where they give receivers the options to like read where the defense is playing, and then you adjust your route to do that. I can get into that a little bit differently, but like that's his own little spin that has kind of become his trademark in the coaching industry. Is like how he approaches that a little bit different than other air raid coaches. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it, I guess.
I think for like Will Henderson, for example, on his offense is something to get really excited about. I think if Overmeyer and Thomas were to be back, I would have been perfect for this offense. With the people coming in, with the guys coming in, I'm not, it's going to be TBD on whether they can produce, right? Especially at that level. But and that's why I mentioned like why things would be exciting on offense right now is because of everything Jared mentioned. Especially, and he makes notes about maximizing the roster, right? And the personnel. I think UTSA has the personnel to be pretty successful with his ideas, especially with an accurate quarterback that has the arm and an explosive running back. If they can just figure out the pieces at wide receiver, somebody like Amador, if he can stay healthy, my goodness, he should be able to put some numbers on with the Bowie offense, right? Because like you mentioned, it's all about spacing. It's all about getting people out in space, creating matchups, and even with the departures, I think UTSA is in a good spot on the personnel side.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Javi. I think Henderson's going to totally thrive in this offense. It's just going to give him so much space to go hit that edge and take off. The more I learned about this offense, especially watching Western Kentucky this year, because I used a lot of tight end, I'll get into that as well. It sucks that Thomas and Overmeyer aren't here because they're so perfect for this offense. And I think Ty Roop is like of a similar style of tight end. But at first I was a little confused because you saw the tight ends leave. It was like, okay, it makes sense. They're going to an air raid. They're going to play with 4 receivers most of the time. But then I did like more research. I'm like, oh, he actually likes to use tight ends. So then you saw them go hit the portal and go grab some tight ends out of the portal. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. But it does add up, right? And one thing that I really like about Bowie is there was an interview I saw of him when he was at Western Kentucky. And they asked him about personnel groups. And he said, I always tell my guys, if you're a receiver, you're not just competing with the other receivers to get on the field. Because if I'm getting my best play from my tight end room, I'm putting them on the field as well, right? So that's going to take a receiver off the field. And instead of having 4 receivers out there, you might have 1 tight end, 2 tight ends, and same for running backs, right? If your running backs aren't producing, they're not any good, then you'll go 5 wide and you'll put a bunch of receivers, a bunch of tight ends out there. But who the playmakers are, the guys that are making the plays, they're going to be on the field. And he's not going to force. And we've seen UTSA do this. Like they force 12 personnel even when they don't have 2 tight ends that are playing well at the same time, right? So I do hope that he holds true to that. And we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, there's going to be an adjustment period for sure. But, he's not like totally gridlocked into like air raid 4 or 5 receivers. In fact, I would expect the opposite. I would expect the tight end and running back on most plays.
Saying he's not going to let his loyalty to a player become a liability, Jared.
Well,
he's
maybe,
the best guys out there, the best guys that are playing, the guys that are playing the best are going to be.
I think it's more about loyalty and comfort with a scheme, because like that is a huge part of the traditional air raid. Is like you have 4 receivers, you don't have a tight end, you have a running back, right? And like those are your 5 skill positions. So that's another way that you see his offense being a little bit more modern and more, distinct than your traditional air raid. Like when you just hear the word air raid and what you think, you're going to see the 2 slot receivers and the 2 out wide.
I will say the offensive line is going to have to slim down a little bit because usually, your typical air raid offensive lineman's a little bit leaner, right? Not as heavy as we tend to be sometimes with the offensive line, but. It's also comforting that, guys like O'Marin Peterson and Brandon Hyde, who's back, they're going to be able to work on those short down situations, right? Where, Henderson can be like your every down type back. You have those heavy hitters that can come and get you those like 2-3 yards. So again, just very versatile on offense and the personnel. It's exciting to be sure.
And UTSA's offensive line is used to quick snaps, right? And not too much time in between plays. And so Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit they can handle there, but yeah, you're probably right, Javi. To a degree, they might need to quicken up the pace a little bit. What about we talk about using Will Henderson a lot? I mean, is there going to be a lot of scenarios where you're using the running back as a receiver
Yeah,
under
I was
Bowie's
actually going
offense?
to read a quote to you guys that I pulled out of an interview from when he was at Abilene Christian. The local news there was kind of asking him, like, what should fans expect from this air raid and all that. And Bowie's quote was like, there's a huge misconception out there that the air raid is where you just throw the ball every down. And he's like, for me and my offense, like, we really pride ourselves on running the football. We want to be a very physical group. And we see the air raid about balancing who touches the ball and maximizing the space on the field. So when he talks about his goals in the offense, it's like spacing and numbers, right? Like how it. I always think back to like the 2021 Western Kentucky game against UTSA. It was like pick your poison, right? They would put people outside to stop the big three receivers, and then Sincere McCormick would have a ton of space and bust open these long runs against a 4-man tackle box. Okay, well now we got to respond to that. So they took a defensive player out of coverage and put him back in the safety box. Okay, well now you got one-on-one coverage against Zachary Franklin, and then boom, there he goes, RPO for a touchdown.
Mm.
So that's to me what I see Bowie talking about here is like how is the defense responding to what we're showing them, and now where do we have the most space and the ability to go get a playmaker the ball in a way that can make chunk yardage.
The ability to adjust what the defense is giving you too.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to Henderson, you may not see them come out of the box like, okay, we're gonna make sure that Henderson gets 20 touches this game, but it may end up that way because they are having success on the outside, and then it creates a lot of space for Will to get limited tackle boxes and have that ability to hit the edge and hit the big one. So I could share some more like philosophy things that I picked out from him in my many hours of videos that I watched. So I mentioned earlier that he's a little bit different than a lot of modern coaches because a lot of these air raid teams nowadays are doing option routes for the receivers. So like they come in with a play call, come in line of scrimmage, and then the receiver and the quarterback are surveying what coverage the defense is showing. And if they're showing like a certain coverage shell where there's going to be safety help over the top, then that receiver can maybe choose to like, okay, because I'm probably not going to be able to get open really easily downfield, I'm actually going to cut back this route and kind of go underneath and like take the 8-10 yards they're giving me. Or, okay, they're not having safety help over top. So like I have the option now to like do a double move and like get open over the top. And we saw Brad Jackson at Texas State like really kill UTSA with that. There are a lot of plays like that where the ball was thrown, the receiver hadn't even broke yet, but because he was on the exact same page as the receiver of like what move are you going to take, it created a lot of easy opportunities for him. So you may be like, okay, that sounds great. That sounds very hard to defend. Why wouldn't you do that? So the reason why Bowie does not like to do those like choice or option routes with his receivers is because he's very much opposed to what he calls the gray zone. The gray zone is where there is any ambiguity between the receiver and the quarterback on what route is going to be run, when the ball's going to be thrown, when the ball is going to be thrown, where it's going to be thrown. So he seeks to avoid that, and he feels like when you have that choice option, there's always going to be the chance of miscommunication or like misunderstanding between that receiver and the quarterback, and a lot of times that turns into turnovers. So there's a lot of plays this year, and I don't know if it's an option route or not, but there were a lot of plays this year where Owen threw the football, and it was not even in the same area code as the receiver. Someone read something wrong. Someone had the wrong play call. They read something wrong. Those plays can go really poorly. So what Bowie does with his offense instead, and this is what I alluded to earlier about like making the safeties choose and putting downfield pressure, is he's developed something that he calls like the storm route or the storm player. And I love it because it's like such like a backyard football concept, but it's very, very fun. So the play call is storm, and in the storm play call, you tag a receiver as the storm receiver. So that could be like when you call the play call, it's like, okay, Amador is the storm receiver on this storm play. So the only assignment he has is just to get downfield, right? And he has the ability to run pretty much wherever he wants. The only limitation he has is you can't make a double move if you're more than 10 yards down the field. So you can run 5-8 yards and then pretty much run wherever you want, but you have to be stretching the defense out vertically. So it's very interesting because you always have a deep threat there, but you always combine it with a really deep curl route within like the coupling of receivers, the trio of receivers, because there's no way that the safety can cover both of those. And when you run this correctly, you have a way to beat pretty much every type of coverage, because you also have like an underneath route that cuts across the middle of the field that kind of brings in that mesh, old school air raid where you're dragging across that middle of the field. So when you combine these routes together, it really creates a lot of opportunity for the quarterback. And it's very quick, easy reads, right? You're typically just reading one guy, seeing how that safety reacts. Okay, is he going to follow the storm player up the field and cover deep? If so, that deep curl route is probably open right next to him. But if he doesn't, then that storm receiver is probably going to get open. And the quarterback can throw that guy open. He says, like, let the ball lead you inside, right? So they want the guy getting vertical. Quarterback throws it to the inside shade, and the receiver is supposed to just drift over and adjust to the ball that's in the air. Again, we saw Texas State do that repeatedly against UTSA this past year and have a lot of success with it. So it's a really cool concept, and UTSA's just done a really poor job of attacking the ball downfield. So it's going to be cool to see a novel approach to that. And, of course, you make the best receiver your storm receiver on most plays.
And I think we mentioned it like this season, but especially early on, how Jeff mentioned that it was they need to simplify the offense.
Mm-hmm.
I think going to some of this these concepts and this philosophy mitigate some of that, right? Not having as many options, as many reads for the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Having the storm receiver and the storm concept is fantastic, right? Because all of a sudden, no matter what they're running, either man or zone, you're going to have at least one receiver that's best suited to counter it, right? Like if they're playing man, the guy coming across the middle is probably going to be your best bet, right? Because he's going to have somebody trailing, right? But while you're always going to have the safety valve over the top if things go bad, and maybe that receiver, if Owen has to scramble, right, he's the one that's going to be dedicated to being open. And no one will always know that he can find them, right? Because he's going to be open, hopefully, for the most part. So, I think it's going to be great for Owen. Sometimes it seemed like he was just trying to do too much at once. I think not necessarily saying he's going to be one read, right, but kind of knowing his receivers and knowing the play call ahead of time a little bit is going to help him just kind of like, okay, this is what I'm going to be looking for, instead of like, oh crap, am I going to hand it off? Am I going to tuck it and run?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Javi,
it's simplifying while being complicated at the same time.
Yeah, and I've got great news for you, Javi. I think a lot of the fan base has grown tired of the RPOs. We've seen them work really well for UTSA. They have not worked well the last few years. No. Bowie is not a fan of the RPO. Like, he had a whole 10-minute spiel about how RPOs have kind of been bastardized by coaches. Because when you think about a traditional RPO, like when they first became popular, the RPO was not like making the quarterback do all these crazy reads and like hold the ball there, pull it out, throw it fast, like, and all that stuff. Like, you come up and you look at what the defense is showing you, right? And you want to run the ball. It's a run pass option. You call an RPO because you want to run the ball. But if you call that play and they've got 6 dudes in the tackle box, you're probably not going to have success. So the pass option is to take relief off the play, right? You throw it outside because you've got the numbers out there, right? And that has not really been what a lot of offenses have done lately. Like, they've okay, I'm going to pick this player. I'm going to read this player. What's this player going to do? I'm going to move off of that. But the original version of the RPO was not like that, right? The original version was I'm going to run it unless you stack the box, and then I'm going to throw it out, right? And Bowie likes those kind of RPOs. He does not like what we have seen a lot of from UTSA this last year, is I have my eye on this 5 tech, or I have my eye on this outside linebacker, right? And if they run this way, I'm going to pull it, I'm going to throw it, or if they don't, I'm going to hand it off and all of that. So it's a very simplified version, but for the most part, he likes to call run plays to run the ball. He likes to call pass plays to pass the ball, and doesn't like to really blend those two together all that much. And he actually has some PROs, some pass run options, where you call it for pass, but if it's a 4-man tackle box and you've got Wilderness in the backfield, give him the damn football and let him go run for 30 yards. That's what I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I think that more simplified version of the RPO is more what we saw in the CUSA championship winning days under Frank Harris. And he was so good at running sort of that simplified version of it, of being able to just sort of, it's more of being able to flex the call at the line of scrimmage rather than having to do things once the ball has been snapped and figuring that out on the fly. Yeah. And you talk about the storm route, and like I think that storm route takes away the onus of having to have the synchronicity or the chemistry that is so perfect between wide receiver and quarterback. It's very rare for wide receiver and quarterback to have that chemistry that is so well timed that the quarterback can throw the ball before the receiver's in his spot or has his head turned around. Frank Harris is fortunate enough to have a couple of receivers he could do that with, but Owen has not had that sort of synchronicity with any of his wideouts in his tenure. I mean, maybe to some degree, Amador, whenever Amador was really healthy last year, but they never really got to see the full stride of it. And I think that storm route more so, and it now just really puts the onus on the receivers' catch making ability, right? I mean, the guy gets open, Owen can put it there in that vicinity, and now the receiver's got to come down with the football. So it does feel like it's a much better match to the personnel that UTSA currently has on roster.
Yeah, I think my biggest holdup right now is just the overall talent in the receiver room. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of people that think like, okay, if your quarterback can execute the air raid really well, like you don't have to have world beaters at a receiver. And I think there's a lot of truth to that for sure. But I mean, I do feel like you have to have like really dependable receivers who can really read a defense well. I think that's one of the big things when it comes to air raid is like knowing how to read that space and know where to sit in the zone and all that becomes super, super important. And just the hands, right, of like not dropping the ball is so critical because it's kind of like an option offense. Like you get behind, it throws your whole system out of whack, and like drops have been a big problem for UTSA. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I could definitely see this change being like a really positive one for those receivers and to take a step forward. But I just feel like a lot of the receivers that we have on the roster, like they don't strike me as air raid receivers. Like they're more physically gifted, I guess, but like the intelligence aspect is super important in air raid. I think we'll have to see how they get coached up and how they execute there.
You need high level route runners,
yeah, for sure,
to be able to execute this at the top level.
I feel
Right.
like
Speaking of,
if you have an air raid with a bunch of dudes that run 4.6s, but they know how to get open and they run good routes, like that's going to beat a bunch of dudes that run 4.4s, 4.3s, but they've got bad hands and they don't read the defense very well.
speaking of receivers, right?
Yeah, we'll move on to the other new hire, Denarius McGee. Really young dude, just 34 years old, but he's got a pretty good resume for a guy his age.
Yeah, I was when I saw his age and his resume, I was like, wait, did I get the right guy? Because it seemed like if it was like 40, 44, like I'd be like, okay, that makes more sense. He was at Utah State last year, but before that, he was with the Saints. Actually, I mean, we can only assume that's where the Traylor connection comes from.
Mhm.
His son was with the Saints in some capacity. I don't exactly remember what he did for the Saints. So I think that's where they kind of crossed paths, and then McGee ended up at Utah State as their passing coordinator and wide receivers coach. So yeah, no, it's another guy that's definitely with a really good resume on the younger side, but really has the potential to be the next great wide receiver coach at UTSA.
Yeah, and just like Bowie has just enough Texas experience to make it work. I mean, I think it's the same for Denarius McGee. He grew up in Mississippi, but he played his high school ball at USS Trinity. Obviously, you guys know very well it's a very, very strong program. He knows the Metroplex and the top programs in the state. Who's also a assistant coach for the Texans as well. So he's been in the Houston area. He's going to know the schools there. So I think that's really nice from a recruiting standpoint that he's going to know the area. And he may not be like Texas through and through and coach at 5 different schools in the state of Texas, but he definitely knows the area, and I think that'll be a big benefit for him.
Yeah, definitely. So like you're swapping the East Houston pipeline for a DFW pipeline. It's pretty even trade, to be quite honest with you. And I like the NFL experience. I think it's something that players get excited about, right? I mean, this guy is coached at the league. Players are trying to get to the league, right? And so UTSA has a bit of a track record of getting guys a chance to go play at the pro level. I do think there's a lot there from a recruiting positive.
Yeah, and it's always cool when those guys have the connection with NFL players where you can like call Tank Dell on FaceTime when you're talking with a recruit or whatever. Kids are so excited about that. They think they're a celebrity or whatever. McGee's receivers at Utah State were super good last year. He had 2 guys that were all conference. One of them, I think, signed with like Michigan. Like I was really hoping that guy would follow him to UTSA, but he was very clearly a $1 million NIL type player. So I don't think that worked out. But Very very good track record for him there, and I think he's the right profile of coach, right? That's got the skin on the wall. He's been on the game for quite a bit. He's got some local ties. So I'm really happy with it. It seems like a very solid hire.
Yeah, the offense at Utah State, I pulled the numbers when he first got hired, and they were in the top five on pretty much every category. I think the one that stood out the most was the average yards per reception. There were top three in that. So
Yeah,
I know the
it's like
metrics.
13 yards per catch or something like that. 14.
Yeah, it was on the higher side. So yeah, like I think all the metrics that you want in a wide receivers coach slash passing game coordinator, what he did at Utah State, it's all there. I don't know if he's going to get that title at UTSA. It might be like a Joe Price situation where he kind of moves up as he stays with the program, if he does stay with the program for a bit. So yeah, no, I think it's a guy that's going to brings a wealth of experience, has a good phone book, like you mentioned. It's always good to call those NFL players when he's doing on the recruiting trail, right? So, uh, like we mentioned, it's ideas from the outside. It's somebody different, something different, a new set of eyes on the situation. It's not going to hurt, right? I think as good as Joe Price was for UTSA, I think they parted at the right time, like we mentioned, and it's time for somebody else to kind of put their spin on the wide receivers and see if they can get the best out of guys like Amador, or like guys like AJ Wilson, guys like DJ Allen, who are the next ones that are supposed to step up and take those wide receiver spots. See if they can get coached up to the next level.
And McGee, like Bowie, also used to be a quarterback, but he was actually a pretty highly successful four-year starter at Montana State, all-time winningest quarterback. So maybe no stranger to an air raid sort of attack himself. The guy was a Big Sky MVP two times and was all conference team winner every single year of his 4 years. Maybe that's some sort of synchronicity on the air raid offense, bringing in two quarterbacks on the offensive coordinator and the wide receiver hire, that those guys can sort of powwow together and brainstorm together and really put the roster in the best position to be successful in this sort of air raid.
All right, well, let's play devil's advocate. Is there anything here with Bowie or with McGee that maybe gives you guys pause, or you could see a reason for some hesitancy with these guys?
It's kind of a short resume, right? Like, to a degree, Bowie, you could argue, is still somewhat unproven, at least at this level. He's played, he's done extremely well at the caliber that he's been at so far. Can he do it at this level?
Yeah, I think so. For me, can they? Are they going to mesh well with a Traylor and his management style, right? Because like everything, right? We talk about Bowie's offense and McGee's experience, right? Are they going to be receptive to Jeff's spin on their experience and on their takes, right? It can the staff seem to, we can say whatever we want about them, but they seem to mesh very well. Can they kind of seamlessly come in and kind of like take that? Burke is somebody who had been with the program for a long time. Stein and Lenny were with the program for a long time since Jeff got hired, essentially. So can somebody new just kind of come in and hit the ground running without any hiccups? So that would be my only concern there.
And maybe the ability to put the roster pieces in place this offseason to have sort of the immediate turnaround that UTSA requires to be successful next season is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, and I say on Bowie too, he's very like pro portal, pro rev share. He's very, open-minded about that stuff. Like he had a quote like, "Look, we're not going back, right? Like the game is going to be like this for forever now." And the coaches that are open to it and adjust to it and know how to use it well are going to be set up for success. Have a huge leg up over coaches that are a little more hesitant. For me, specifically with Bowie, I think both of these guys' resumes are decent enough for their position as a G5 wide receiver coach or offense coordinator. It matches up for me. The only thing I can see with Bowie, though, is like when he doesn't have an elite quarterback, how good is his offense? So when he had the dude at Valdosta State, like really good player at the Division II level, they were super successful. McIver obviously was a great quarterback at Abilene Christian, and they did great things. McIver goes down with an injury early this year. They have to put a freshman quarterback out there who's He's probably good for a freshman, but he was not a great quarterback. And the offense was like sluggish for sure. Like as far as Western Kentucky's historical performances, they didn't put up crazy stats. Like when you go look at their advanced stats, like overall WQ was like not that strong on offense as they typically are. So then you're also like, well, a freshman quarterback, they still won 8 games or whatever it is. They were decent enough, but then like McIver comes back in the bowl game, and it's like a 9-day difference. Like this offense is humming once McIver gets back on the field. So that's something I'll be watching. I think when Owen McCown's on the field, this offense is going to look really good. But outside of Owen, I don't really know what we have at quarterback position. And if Owen goes down, or we're talking about 2027, I don't know. I've got questions, right? And if an offensive coordinator is only good when he's got an elite quarterback, I don't think he's that good a offensive coordinator. I mean, I think any Dumbo can average 33 yards per game if you got a top quarterback in your league. So that's something I'll be watching for sure. How good can he recruit, develop the quarterbacks? I think he's going to look really good with Owen this year, but it's like outside of that, what's it going to look like is my question.
Yeah, it's fair. I think to a degree, you could make that criticism on any offensive coordinator, any head coach, right? I mean, you need your quarterback to take you as far as you can get.
Yep.
But the recruiting ability is tremendous because there's no one behind Owen. So who's going to bring the next guy up? It's going to be Traylor. He hasn't done it yet. Frank didn't have really anybody behind him until Owen got here. Owen hasn't had anybody behind him his years as a starter. So can Bowie do it? We need somebody to get the next quarterback at UTSA. Who's going to do it? Someone needs to. We're running out of time. We have one more season left.
We can't afford to buy one, man. Like an Owen McCown level quarterback, it's not happening. It's got to be homegrown.
Yeah. And Owen could leave and go get a big paycheck today if he wanted to. Right? I mean, it's easy, but you got to find him.
Well, I guess to wrap us up, I mean, we do have a bit of like a kind of lingering coaching change. Darren Starling reported that Sid Haynes was taking a job at New Mexico State. Not really sure what's going on there. I mean, there's not been a lot of reporting on that. New Mexico State's defensive line coach did leave, but they haven't announced anything. Haynes has been like totally radio silent. He's like not in any pictures of visits or tweeting anything at all. His bio hasn't changed, so it doesn't seem likely he's coming back to UTSA, but we also don't know where he's at. But, feels a little premature to talk too much about him until we have a little bit more clarity there. So I guess we'll see how that shakes out. I don't know if anyone has anything else on that.
No, yeah, just a weird situation. But, I mean, the fact that he's not in any of the recruiting pictures as they're rebuilding the defensive line is kind of telling.
Right, for sure.
And, we talk about the mass exodus that UTSA has seen so far this season, the majority of that being on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep. Well, they're recruiting quite well without Haynes there. So, that is interesting. Also, Corey Jordan was one of the assistant safeties coaches. He has left the program. He's now at UNT as their primary safeties coach. So some chatter about that online, but, it made sense to me. I think he's a good young rising coach, and that was a nice move upwards for him to, lose the assistant title and become a full-time on-field coach. So wish him well. But it seems like Jeff Lep's not going anywhere, so he coaches the safeties. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, good chat. Thanks for letting me nerd out about the air raid with you guys. Much more to learn. New system for all of us, but I think it's an exciting one for sure. As we wrap up here, I do want to say thank you as always to our Patreon supporters, including our Board of Trustees members, Digi Teak, John Otwell, Gary and Ruben represent the UTSA Berkeley Tailgate, Ray Redding, Andy Elizada, Proficient Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon and Seeker LLC, Javon Townsend, President of the DFW Chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, Waterman Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Brandon Patron, UTSA King Bowser, Runners United, where you go to www.goutsa.co to support UTSA student athletes.
Also, a big shout out to our big money donors. That's Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdall, our host of Around the Bird Bath. Stay tuned for a lot of Around the Bird Bath episodes coming your way as UTSA baseball gets their 2026 season started.
First day of practice today.
Baby. Jacob Cavazos, former board president of the UTSA Alumni Association. John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, Joe Rodriguez, TSA grad at 1998, Russell Rincon, Brandy Dunnigan, realtor with the Social House Group and Home Field Apparel, where you can save 15% on your first order with the discount code UTSA once home field. And also the Alamo Audible Fan Shop, where you can get some sweet tailgate merch right here from Alamo Audible.